The icy December wind swept across the Montana plains, creating small snow whirlwinds around the Henderson family's rural property. Jake, now 23 years old, adjusted his brown leather jacket as he walked toward the barn, his boots leaving deep marks in the fresh snow. The young man had grown considerably since he was 12 when he lost Thunder, his favorite horse, but the pain of that loss still echoed in his heart. Inside the light blue painted wooden house, his mother Sarah was preparing breakfast. The aroma of bacon and scrambled eggs filled the cozy kitchen, decorated with red and white checkered curtains. Jake entered through the back door, stomping his boots to shake off the snow. "Good morning, honey," said Sarah, turning from the stove. She wore a dark green wool sweater and a floral apron. "Did your father already go check on the cattle?" "Yes, he left early. Said he'd be back for lunch," Jake replied, hanging his jacket on the hook beside the door. "Mum, do you remember that photographer who came here last week? The one documenting wild horses?" Sarah nodded, pouring coffee into a navy blue mug. "Of course, Marcus something. Why do you ask?" Before Jake could answer, his phone vibrated. A Facebook notification appeared on the screen. It was a message from Marcus Thompson, the wildlife photographer who had recently visited the property. Jake frowned, intrigued. "Jake, I hope you remember me. I stopped by your property last week photographing wild horses. I have something that might interest you. Can I call?" Jake's heart raced. There was something in the urgency of the message that made him uneasy. He quickly typed a response. "Sure, you can call now." A few minutes later, the phone rang. Marcus's voice on the other end was loaded with emotion. "Jake, you won't believe what I'm about to show you. Yesterday, while reviewing the photos I took in the region, I found something extraordinary. There's an image of a horse that, well, I need you to see it for yourself. Can I send it by email?" "Sure," Jake responded, his voice trembling slightly. "But why are you so excited? It's just a wild horse, isn't it?" "Jake," Marcus paused dramatically, "this horse has a very specific mark on its neck, a crescent moon-shaped scar. You mentioned that your lost horse had that mark, remember?" Jake's world stopped. Thunder had exactly that mark, a scar he had gotten as a colt when he injured himself on a fence. It was impossible. Thunder had disappeared 11 years ago during a terrible storm. They had searched for weeks but never found even a trace. That's impossible," Jake murmured, his hand shaking as he held the phone. "I'm sending the photo now. Check your email," Marcus said. "And Jake, there's one more thing. The horse isn't alone in the photo." Jake ran to the family computer in the living room. His hands trembled as he opened the email. Sarah followed him, worried about the expression on her son's face. The image loaded slowly. First appeared the snowy Montana landscape, then the trees in the background, and finally, there he was. A chestnut horse with a dark mane, exactly like Thunder, and there, clearly visible on the neck, was the crescent moon-shaped scar. "My God," Sarah whispered, placing her hand on Jake's shoulder. "Is it really him?" But Jake was focused on something else in the image. Next to Thunder, there was a white mare with a small foal. The foal had the same chestnut coloring as Thunder and a small white mark on its forehead. "Marcus," Jake said into the phone, his voice almost a whisper, "where exactly did you take this photo?" "At the Glacier Nature Reserve, about 150 kilometers north of your property. Jake, that foal. It looks a lot like Thunder when he was young." Jake felt tears welling up in his eyes. After all these years, Thunder was not only alive but had formed a family. The horse he had raised since it was a foal, who had been his best friend during childhood, was out there living free in the Montana mountains. "I need to go there," Jake said, determination growing in his voice. "I need to see with my own eyes." "Jake, honey," Sarah said softly, "it's been 11 years. Even if it is Thunder, he's wild now. It could be dangerous." But Jake was already making his decision. He had lost Thunder once by not doing enough to find him. He wouldn't make the same mistake again. The next morning, Jake woke before dawn. He had spent the entire night looking at the photo, studying every detail. There was no doubt. It was Thunder. The scar, the posture, even the way the horse held its head slightly tilted to the left, exactly as it did when it was young. He dressed in warm clothes, dark jeans, a red and black flannel shirt, and his gray winter jacket. His hiking boots were beside the bed, ready for the journey he had planned. In the kitchen, he found his father, Robert, drinking coffee. The 55-year-old man, with graying hair and wearing a navy blue wool sweater, looked at his son with concern. "Your mother told me about the photo," Robert said, his voice deep and careful. "Jake, I understand what you're feeling, but you need to think clearly. Glacier is wild territory. It's no place to go alone, especially in winter. Dad, it's thunder, Jake replied, pouring coffee into a thermal cup. After all these years, he's alive. I can't just ignore this. Robert sighed, recognizing the determination in his son's eyes, the same determination Jake had inherited from him. Then don't go alone. Marcus knows the region, right? Ask him to accompany you. Jake nodded. It was a good idea. He picked up the phone and called Marcus, who answered on the second ring. Jake, I was expecting your call. You want to go after him, don't you? Yes. Would you come with me? I know horses, but you know that region. Of course, Marcus responded without hesitation. Actually, I was hoping you'd ask. I have a friend who works for the Forest Service, Tom Bradley. He can help us with permits and knows the best routes. 2 hours later, Jake was driving his dark blue pickup down the road leading to the town of Whitefish, where he would meet Marcus. The Montana landscape stretched around him. Snow-covered fields, majestic mountains in the distance, and the clear blue winter sky. During the trip, Jake couldn't stop thinking about thunder. He remembered the day the horse had arrived at the property, just a scared foal who had lost its mother. Jake, then 8 years old, had convinced his parents to let him care for the animal. They had grown up together, developing a connection that went beyond the typical relationship between human and animal. Thunder had been more than a horse. He was his confidant, his adventure companion, his best friend. When the horse disappeared during that terrible storm, Jake blamed himself for not bringing Thunder to the barn in time. In Whitefish, Jake found Marcus at the local cafe. The photographer, a 40-year-old man with a red beard wearing a military green jacket, was studying topographic maps spread across the table. Jake! Marcus stood up, extending his hand. Tom is on his way. He brought tracking equipment and knows the movement patterns of wild horses in the region. A few minutes later, Tom Bradley arrived. He was a tall, thin man, about 50 years old, with graying brown hair and wearing a khaki Forest Service uniform. His decades of experience working in the region was evident in the confident way he spoke about the terrain. Boys, Tom said, sitting at the table, you've chosen a difficult time. Winter makes the search more complicated, but it also means the horses stay in lower areas, looking for shelter and food. He pointed to the map. Marcus took the photo here in the Flathead River Valley. It's an area that wild horses frequent because there are natural springs that don't freeze completely in winter. Jake studied the map, memorizing the paths and landmarks. How long would it take to get there? By car, as far as the road allows, about 2 hours, Tom replied. Then we have to go on foot or horseback. I brought 3 horses trained for mountainous terrain. Horses? Jake asked, bitter irony in his voice. We're going to use horses to find a horse. Marcus smiled. It's the best way. They can go where cars can't, and Thunder might recognize other horses from a distance. As they finalized the plans, Jake felt a mixture of anxiety and hope. He was about to embark on the most important journey of his life, a journey that could reunite him with the friend he had lost so many years ago. There's something you need to understand, Tom said, his expression becoming serious. If we find Thunder, he might not recognize Jake. 11 years is a long time. He's wild now, with his own family. We need to be prepared for any reaction. Jake nodded, but in his heart he knew Thunder would remember him. Some bonds are too strong to be broken by time. The group departed at dawn on the 3rd day. Morning mist covered the mountains like a silver veil, and the air was so cold their breaths formed small clouds. Jake rode a sturdy brown horse named Copper, while Marcus rode a black mare called Shadow, and Tom led the way on a grey gelding named Storm. The journey through Glacier's wilderness was breathtaking, yet challenging. Snow-covered pine trees stretched endlessly, and the silence was broken only by the sound of hooves crunching through snow and the occasional call of a distant eagle. The tracks are fresh, Tom announced, after dismounting to examine the ground near a frozen stream. He wore thick brown gloves and a forest green winter coat. A group of horses passed through here yesterday, maybe early this morning. Jake's heart pounded as he studied the hoof prints in the snow. Could one of them belong to Thunder? After 3 hours of riding, they reached a ridge overlooking the Flathead River Valley. Tom raised his binoculars, scanning the area below. There, he whispered, pointing toward a cluster of trees near the riverbank. I count 5 horses, 2 adults and 3 younger ones. Marcus quickly set up his camera with a telephoto lens while Jake dismounted, his legs shaky from both the cold and anticipation. Through the binoculars, He could see the horses clearly, and his breath caught in his throat. There, standing protectively near a white mare and two foals, was a chestnut horse with a dark mane. Even from this distance, Jake could see the distinctive way the horse held its head, the familiar posture he remembered so well. "It's him," Jake whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. "It's really Thunder." The horse seemed to sense something, lifting its head and looking in their direction. For a moment, across the vast expanse of snow and wilderness, Jake felt as if Thunder was looking directly at him. "We need to get closer," Jake said, starting to move down the slope. "Wait," Tom grabbed his arm. "We can't just approach them. Wild horses are extremely cautious, especially with foals. We need to be strategic." Marcus continued photographing, while Tom explained their options. "We can try to get within about 50 meters, but we'll need to move slowly and let them get used to our presence." They spent the next hour carefully making their way down the slope, stopping frequently to allow the horses to observe them without feeling threatened. Jake's heart raced with each step closer to Thunder. When they were about 70 meters away, Thunder suddenly lifted his head high, his nostrils flaring as he caught their scent. The horse took several steps forward, separating himself from his family, his ears pricked forward in alert attention. "He's curious," Tom observed quietly. "That's unusual for a wild horse." Jake slowly dismounted from Copper, his movements deliberate and calm. He began walking forward, his hands visible and empty. Thunder watched every step, his body tense but not fleeing. "Thunder," Jake called softly, using the same gentle tone he had used years ago. "Thunder, it's me." The horse's ears twitched at the sound of his name. He took another step forward, then stopped as if wrestling with conflicting instincts. The wild caution he had developed over 11 years, and something deeper, a memory stirring in the depths of his mind. Jake continued his slow approach, talking softly. "I know it's been a long time, boy. I know you've built a new life here. I just wanted to see you again." When Jake was about 20 meters away, Thunder suddenly whinnied, a sound Jake recognized immediately. It was the same greeting Thunder had given him every morning when he was young. The horse took several quick steps forward, then stopped again, his head tilted in that familiar way. "He remembers," Marcus whispered from behind his camera. "He actually remembers." Tears streamed down Jake's face as he continued forward. Thunder was magnificent, stronger and more muscular than he had been as a young horse, his coat thick and healthy from years of wild living. But his eyes were the same intelligent, gentle eyes Jake remembered. When they were finally close enough to touch, Thunder stretched his neck forward, sniffing Jake's outstretched hand. The moment their skin made contact, both horse and human seemed to freeze, as if 11 years of separation melted away in an instant. Thunder nuzzled Jake's hand, then his shoulder, making soft nickering sounds. Jake wrapped his arms around the horse's neck, feeling the warmth and strength of his old friend. "I missed you so much," Jake whispered into Thunder's mane. "I never stopped looking for you." For nearly an hour, Jake and Thunder remained together in the snow-covered valley. The horse seemed as reluctant to break the connection as Jake was, but gradually, Thunder's attention turned back to his family. The white mare had approached cautiously with the two foals, and Jake could see the protective instincts that had kept Thunder alive in the wilderness. "Jake," Tom said gently, approaching with Marcus, "we need to talk about what happens next." Jake knew this moment would come, but he wasn't prepared for how difficult it would be. Thunder was no longer the young horse he had raised. This was a mature stallion with responsibilities, a leader of his small herd, a father protecting his offspring. "I know what you're thinking," Jake said, not taking his eyes off Thunder. "You think I should try to bring him home." "The thought crossed my mind," Tom admitted. "But look at him, Jake. Really look at him." Jake studied Thunder carefully. The horse was alert, strong, and clearly thriving in his natural environment. His coat was thick and lustrous, his muscles well developed from years of mountain living. Most importantly, he seemed content, complete with his family around him. "He's not the same horse that disappeared 11 years ago," Marcus observed, still documenting the encounter with his camera. "He's become something more, a wild horse, a survivor, a leader." Thunder seemed to sense the conversation was about him. He moved between Jake and his family, as if making his own statement about where his loyalties now lay. The white mare nickered softly, and one of the foals, the chestnut one that looked so much like Thunder, approached curiously. Jake knelt in the snow as the young foal came close enough to touch. The little horse had Thunder's intelligent eyes and the same white mark on his forehead that Thunder had as a colt. "He's beautiful," Jake whispered, gently stroking the foal's neck. "He looks just like you did when you were young." Thunder watched the interaction carefully, but there was no tension in his posture. It was as if he understood that Jake posed no threat to his family, that this was simply a reunion between old friends. The white mare, whom Jake decided to call Snow in his mind, stepped closer. She was elegant and graceful, with kind eyes that reminded Jake of Thunder's gentle nature. Her coat was pristine white, except for a few grey markings around her muzzle that suggested she was mature, experienced. The second foal, a filly with a coat that mixed white and light brown patches, stayed close to her mother, but watched Jake with curious eyes. "She's beautiful too," Jake said to Thunder, gesturing toward Snow. "You chose well, my friend." As if understanding the compliment, Thunder moved to stand beside Snow, nuzzling her neck affectionately. The gesture was so tender, so full of genuine affection, that Jake felt his heart both break and heal simultaneously. Thunder had found love, real partnership, something Jake had always hoped for his beloved horse. Marcus continued photographing, capturing not just the reunion, but the entire family dynamic. "Jake, I've been documenting wild horses for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like this. The way Thunder is including you in his family circle, it's extraordinary." Tom, who had been quietly observing from a respectful distance, approached slowly. His weathered face showed years of experience with wildlife, and his expression was thoughtful. "In all my years working with wild horses, I've seen many that were once domesticated return to the wild. Most lose all connection to their former lives. But Thunder, he's bridging two worlds right now." The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the mountain peaks, casting long golden shadows across the snow. The temperature was dropping, and Jake could see his breath forming small clouds in the crisp air. He knew they would need to start the journey back soon, but the thought of leaving Thunder again felt impossible. "Tell me about his life here," Jake asked Tom, gesturing toward the vast wilderness surrounding them. "How does he survive? What are the challenges?" Tom settled into the snow beside Jake, his forest green jacket contrasting against the white landscape. Wild horses in this region face significant challenges, especially in winter. They have to find food under the snow, locate unfrozen water sources, and protect themselves from predators like mountain lions and wolves. Jake's stomach tightened at the mention of predators. "Wolves? There's a pack that roams this territory," Tom continued, "but Thunder's clearly learned to deal with them. Look at his scars." For the first time, Jake noticed the faint marks on Thunder's flanks and shoulders, evidence of encounters with wild predators, battles fought and won. Each scar told a story of survival, of a domestic horse who had learned to thrive in one of North America's most challenging environments. "He's become a true wild stallion," Marcus added, lowering his camera. "The way he positions himself between potential threats and his family, his alertness, his physical condition, he's adapted completely." Thunder seemed to sense they were discussing him. He approached Jake again, this time bringing Snow and the foals with him. The chestnut colt, bolder than his sister, actually nuzzled Jake's hand, seeking attention. "What would you name them?" Jake asked Thunder, as if the horse could answer. "This little guy looks like he could be called Storm, with that wild spirit in his eyes." The colt seemed to respond to the name, prancing slightly and tossing his small head. Snow watched the interaction with what Jake could only describe as maternal approval, as if she understood that Jake was someone special to Thunder. As the minutes passed, Jake found himself studying every detail of Thunder's new life. The way the stallion constantly scanned the horizon for threats, the protective positioning near his family, the confident way he moved through terrain that would challenge most horses. This wasn't just survival. Thunder was thriving. "You know," Jake said quietly, "when I was 12 and you disappeared, I used to have nightmares about you being alone, scared, hungry. I never imagined this." Thunder stepped closer, pressing his forehead against Jake's chest in a gesture so familiar it transported Jake back to his childhood. It was the same way Thunder used to greet him every morning, a private ritual between boy and horse. "I used to dream about finding you," Jake continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But in my dreams, you were always waiting for me to rescue you, to bring you home. I never imagined you'd rescue yourself, build a new home." Marcus had stopped taking photos and was simply watching the interaction with obvious emotion. Jake, what Thunder has accomplished here, it's remarkable. Most domestic horses released into the wild don't survive their first winter. Thunder not only survived, but became a leader. Tom nodded in agreement. The fact that he's successfully bred and is raising healthy foals means he's mastered every aspect of wild horse life. Finding food, water, shelter, avoiding predators, establishing territory, he's done it all. As if to demonstrate his mastery of the environment, Thunder suddenly lifted his head, ears pricked forward, alert to something the humans couldn't detect. Within seconds, he had positioned himself between his family and whatever had caught his attention, his body tense and ready. After a moment, a deer emerged from the tree line about 100 meters away. Thunder relaxed but remained watchful until the deer moved on. The display of protective instincts was impressive and spoke to the depth of Thunder's transformation. He's not just surviving, Jake realized aloud. He's the protector, the provider, the leader. Taking him away from this would be like taking a CEO away from his company, a father away from his children. The realization hit Jake with surprising force. He had come here thinking about what he wanted, what he had lost, what he hoped to regain. But Thunder's life wasn't about Jake anymore. It was about Snow, about Storm and the little filly, about the responsibility of leadership in this harsh but beautiful wilderness. "I need to ask you something," Jake said to Thunder, looking directly into the horse's eyes. "Are you happy? Really, truly happy?" Thunder's response was immediate and clear. He moved to stand beside Snow, nuzzling her neck, then gently nudged each foal. His body language radiated contentment, purpose, fulfillment. This wasn't a horse making the best of a bad situation. This was a horse who had found his calling. The sun was now touching the mountain peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The temperature was dropping rapidly, and Jake knew they needed to begin the journey back to their vehicles soon. But he wasn't ready to say goodbye, might never be ready. "There's something else you should know," Tom said quietly. "This area is protected wilderness. Thunder and his family are safe here. No one can capture them. No development can disturb them. They have legal protection." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. "So even if I wanted to take him home, it would be illegal," Tom confirmed. "But more than that, it would be wrong. Look at what he's built here, Jake. Look at what he's become." As if sensing the conversation was reaching a crucial point, Thunder approached Jake one more time. The horse stood quietly, allowing Jake to run his hands over the familiar yet changed body, to memorize the feel of the coat he had groomed so many times as a child. "I understand now," Jake whispered to Thunder. "You didn't get lost 11 years ago. You found yourself. You found your true purpose." Thunder nickered softly, a sound Jake remembered from countless mornings in the barn, but now it carried new meaning. Not a greeting between captive and caretaker, but a farewell between equals, between old friends who had both grown into who they were meant to be. As the group prepared to leave, Marcus showed Jake the dozens of photos he had taken during the encounter. Each image captured a different moment of the reunion. Thunder's initial recognition, their embrace, the introduction to his family, the tender moments with Snow and the foals. "I'll make sure you have copies of all of these," Marcus promised. "And Jake, what you did today, letting him stay with his family, that took real courage." Jake looked at the photos, seeing not just memories but a complete story. The story of a horse who had transcended his origins to become something magnificent. "These aren't just photos," he said. "They're proof that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is trust them to know what's best for their own life." The ride back to their vehicles was quiet, each man lost in his own thoughts. Jake felt a complex mixture of sadness and joy, loss and fulfillment. He had found Thunder, had been able to say goodbye properly, but he was leaving without his childhood companion. As they reached the ridge where they had first spotted the horses, Jake turned back for one last look. In the distance he could see Thunder's small herd moving toward a stand of trees, the stallion bringing up the rear, still watching the humans' departure. Thunder raised his head high and whinnied once, a sound that carried across the valley like a farewell. Jake raised his hand in response, a final goodbye to his oldest friend. During the drive home, Jake called his parents to tell them about the encounter. Sarah cried when he described finding Thunder with his family, and Robert's voice was gruff with emotion when Jake explained his decision to leave the horse in the wild. "You did the right thing, son," Robert said. "Thunder chose his path just like you chose yours. Sometimes love means letting go." Back at the ranch, Jake hung Marcus's photographs in his room, creating a gallery of memories both old and new. The images of Thunder in the wild, strong and free with his family brought him more peace than he had felt in 11 years. That night, as snow began to fall again outside his window, Jake realized that his search for Thunder had given him something unexpected. Not just closure, but a new understanding of what love really meant. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not holding on, but knowing when to let go. Thunder was exactly where he belonged, wild, free, and happy. And knowing that was enough. The next morning, Jake woke with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. He had spent 11 years wondering about Thunder's fate, carrying guilt about losing him, dreaming of a reunion that would restore what was lost. But the reunion had given him something better, the knowledge that Thunder had not only survived, but had flourished beyond anything Jake could have provided. Over breakfast, Jake shared more details with his parents about Thunder's family, about the protective way the stallion had behaved, about the obvious contentment in the horse's demeanor. Sarah listened with tears in her eyes, while Robert nodded with understanding. "You know," Robert said, "when I was your age, I had a dog that ran away. I spent months looking for him, putting up posters, checking shelters. I never found him, and I carried that guilt for years. What you got yesterday, that closure, that knowledge that Thunder is not just alive but thriving, that's a gift most people never receive." Jake nodded, understanding the truth in his father's words. The photos from Marcus would arrive later that week, but the images were already burned into his memory. Thunder standing proud and alert, Snow beside him with quiet dignity, the foals playing in the snow. It was a complete picture of a life well lived. In the weeks that followed, Jake found himself changed by the experience. The guilt he had carried for 11 years had lifted, replaced by a deep sense of pride in what Thunder had accomplished. He began volunteering with a local horse rescue, helping other horses find their paths to happiness, whether in domestic settings or, in rare cases, prepared returns to the wild. Marcus's photos were eventually featured in a National Geographic article about wild horses in the American West, with Thunder's story serving as an example of successful adaptation to wilderness life. Jake framed the magazine cover, a stunning image of Thunder silhouetted against the Montana sunset, snow and the foals visible in the background. Sometimes on clear winter nights, Jake would step outside and look toward the mountains where Thunder lived. He no longer felt the ache of loss that had haunted him for so many years. Instead, he felt connected to something larger, the understanding that love sometimes means celebrating someone's choice to follow their own path, even when that path leads away from you. Thunder had taught him one final lesson, perhaps the most important one of all, that true freedom isn't just about being able to choose your own direction, but about having the courage to let others choose theirs, even when their choice means saying goodbye. We hope you enjoyed this incredible true story of reunion and love between Jake and Thunder. The bond between humans and animals can transcend time and distance, teaching us valuable lessons about love, sacrifice, and letting go. What did you think of Jake's decision to leave Thunder with his wild family? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell us which city you're watching from. We love connecting with viewers from around the world. Remember, we bring you amazing true stories like this one every day, so make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss these incredible tales of human connection and the power of love. Until tomorrow, keep believing in the extraordinary stories that surround us every day.